Hi guys, we're live. This is Dustin Dye, and I've got a good friend of mine, Mady, with me, who I'll have introduce herself in a second. But before we get started, I have three random questions just to kind of set the mood. Well, we already kind of set the mood with these matching blazers that I think we look pretty fly. But you got a nice little pocket you went up me, but I put a little button thing on.
Nice.
Not at all fancy. Yeah, so I'm gonna start with three just super random questions, set the mood. First one is favorite movie robot.
Tars.
Tars. Okay. If you're which house are you of Harry Potter?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say I'd love to be like a mix of Hufflepuff and Gryffindor.
Okay. Okay.
What about you?
Fair enough. I'm more of a Gryffindor, I think.
Nice.
And favorite Disney princess?
Oh, that's a good one. I'd have to say Mulan.
Mulan. Though the new movie is coming out. Have you seen commercials?
I know. I've seen the trailer. It was supposed to be released last month, right? But didn't, unfortunately. Not a huge problem on the large scale of things, but they might do like an in-home premiere release or something, right? Like a lot of people are doing now. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited for it. The trailer looked really good. Not
Yeah.
gonna lie. Okay, let's jump into things. Brought Mady here today. You want to just go ahead and introduce yourself now that we know all about your house and movie selections?
That really is the most important information. But yeah, I'm a senior AI evangelist now for Rasa, but I'm also a machine learning engineer, and I've been spending a few years building ML-driven products for the enterprise.
Well, it's good to have you here. Do you want to talk? Let's kick things off because you've been in the space for a while now as well. Can we talk about from like 2016, where there was a ton of bot hype, to now you're working with Rasa? You know, use space is growing, and just like what's going on?
Yeah. So I mean, I think you put it really well. Like from 2016, we started to ride the hype cycle of chatbots, and we saw this proliferation of chatbots, and
Yeah.
made predictions like, apps were going to be replaced by bots. So we saw a lot of that, but then immediately we saw this huge backlash, I think in 2017 and 2018, where, you talk to an FAQ bot, it starts to answer your questions, but you ask a follow-up question, or you say something that doesn't follow, the standard if-else logic, and it fails. So there was this backlash, right, against chatbots because it didn't effectively meet expectations, which is it couldn't do everything that the user wanted to do with a chatbot.
Do you think part of that backlash was because of the complexity that was overlooked? Like it was just harder than people thought to build a bot, so they just kind of trashed it. They're like, this isn't as easy as like AI sounds. Like this probably won't work.
Exactly. Everyone is like, oh, AI is this magical thing. It's going to be able to do everything. And I think they started to look at building bots the way they look at building software, which can be simpler, right? Because building a web application or like a website is relatively, I think, easier because it's more well-defined. There's lots of, maturity in terms of experience and tools or something like that. I think that was overlooked, and the expectation that AI could do just everything, or machine learning was able to solve for everything, which I think wasn't necessarily really looked into. And I think that's a problem that you have when you have like a chatbot or a conversational AI application, and you compare it to humans. And humans are really good at handling unexpected user behavior or recovering gracefully from something that's unanticipated or unexpected. And you compare that with an actual human conversation, which is what a lot of folks did. And so there was that huge gap. But, it goes back to your point in that conversational AI is hard, it's a problem to solve.
You made a good comparison with like web development. Web development's been around for a while now, so there's more people that have experience there. Do you think part of the reason that from 2016 till now, that learning curve is just there wasn't that many engineers, developers, and also like the creative side, designers, copywriters, things like that were working together, and
Yeah.
or do you think they're
Yeah, because you need like an product team to build, a conversational AI application. So let's say you're trying to build something that's mission critical, like automating a portion of help desk calls, right? So that's your goal. And you want to build a bot that is able to do that. So, the recommended approach is to build an FAQ or a minimum viable assistant where you have
Mhm.
a bunch of happy path coverage, like, a few conversations where the users are going to answer it and you have that. But it's also, like you said, how do you design that conversation? How you can probably chart out a few hypothetical conversations, right? Which is, I think, what conversation design and bot copy is all about. But then you want to be able to also test it with real users, because real users have a way of surprising you and really asking things that you may not have entered into your training data. So you have additional training data that you can use to build something more robust and more performant. And it's also trying to do things just like you would for any software application is, automating your CI/CD and automating deployments, and using like a UI, right, to visualize and collect conversations, to annotate and tag your data, and then you feed that back to a model, and you have like a continuous learning cycle. And when you have conversations that you can't, that you don't know how to handle just yet, I think Botcopy does a great job of this, is like having your buttons and chips and other UI options to nudge the user back onto a happy path. So you need, a team to be able to really take this to production, because building POCs are easy. And with POCs, you don't really uncover a lot of the hard problems that you do when you go to production or when you test it with test users or real users.
Yeah, let's talk about there's a lot there. Let's talk about the POC for a second, because you've got experience not only now with Rasa, but have also worked with some really large enterprise clients. What is let's take a step back from the POC. Let's say before the POC, like what kind of team, like would you, if you could whip up the perfect team like today to have $100,000 budget to get a POC off the ground, what would the team include? Like, what would it look like? And for the POC, you mentioned FAQs and things like that. Where would you start?
Yeah, no, great question. So when we're talking about like the ideal team makeup or dream team, I think for this you definitely need a minimum of,
You need blue suits.
sorry, what's that?
You need blue suits.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, you need a team of like 4 or 5 people, right? You definitely need business representation. You need like a business analyst or someone like that. Someone's able to effectively communicate with the business in terms of what the goals are, and then you help set those goals, which is all right. We're going to automate 35% of help desk calls, and that's the goal. And we also want to, I don't know, modernize the workplace or something like that. And then when it comes to actually building out this application, you need 1 or 2 data engineers, someone that's really able to, especially when we're talking about enterprises. Enterprises have a ton of data. And when we talk about innovation, people don't necessarily look at enterprises or look to enterprises in that they're innovating a whole lot. But that's not actually true, because they have a ton of data, and that we now have the technical capabilities to tell a really good story with this data, right? So you need someone to be able to clean and process and pre-process your data. So you need a couple of data engineers. You also need actual like software developers that can do integrations with third-party services, because it's great if you have a chatbot that can answer your questions, but if it can actually do things for you, like open a ticket for you by integrating with ServiceNow, or just set up a meeting for you by integrating with Outlook or G Suite or something like that. That drives true value. So you need someone to do these integrations. You need 1 or 2 DevOps engineers to handle your CI/CD pipeline, automate deployments, and things like that. But you also need a project manager, just like you would for any software application project. And you also need a copywriter, someone to do conversation design and figure out how your bot should respond to things. And as you start collecting data, improve your bot's responses and make all of that better. So I think an ideal team would have representation from data, from development, DevOps, project management, and conversation design.
Yeah, before the POC, like you're getting it kicked off, what kind of data sets typically do you look at? Like with Botcopy, so we're focused primarily on the like website and front end. So sometimes that design is going to be a little bit different than if you're gearing up for like a voice assistant that's only going to be on speakers, or maybe even a Facebook Messenger that might have more of a marketing play. But what have you typically seen? Like, where do they start? We've looked at like calls that have been recorded for quality purposes, emails we've gone through to try to get a general feeling of the FAQs. But where have you started?
Yeah, I mean, after we have like an initial goal of doing something, whether that's like automating a portion of these help desk calls, or maybe increasing your cart abandonment rate by like 10%, which when you're talking about like a large retailer, that can be, huge in terms of cost saving and, revenue and productivity and things like that. So after you have your goal, which will be the purpose of your bot, we start looking at call center recorded conversations. We look at emails, just like you said. We also try to study, the team's behavior. If it's a help desk assistant that's supposed to, answer routine technical issues. In addition to looking at what the most common issues are that the current help desk team deals with, what are the things that the help desk team works on a day-to-day basis that is repeatable, that you could automate with a chatbot, allowing the help desk team to focus on like L2 and higher priority cases that definitely need human intervention. If you're talking about like e-commerce, what is it that customer service representatives do on a day-to-day basis that is repeatable, that if you could automate very easily and seamlessly would allow them to focus on things that aren't mundane and things that actually need human intervention. So we also study, the team's behavior and figure out what we can automate.
You nailed it. One of my favorite things about some of the bot projects that we've seen is not that it is necessarily replacing jobs. It's moving people into a new job or a new opportunity. It's like the mission critical things that you were talking about, or if you're answering repetitive tasks, now you can jump on a call that actually needs more of a human response and understanding, like something went wrong, or a lot of the times like dealing with money and transactions like that sometimes really needs like a human on the other line. It just makes it feel a little more secure. What if, when you see bots, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, but bots that are designed to have strong human and live chat handover versus bots that have been created to be almost 100% deflection. Like what's like a good point? When do you hand off the baton a little bit too early, maybe to a live chat team where the bot can handle that? And how do you kind of work to a point where it just gets a little bit less and less? What have you seen in that?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, because I don't think we have, I think we're trying to solve that balance and that problem together. And every few weeks or so, months or so, we like learn something new when we start to collect feedback that tells us, okay, we can probably hand this task over to a bot too, right? Alan and Alex, the CTO and CEO of Rasa, like to talk about how if you really want to build a good bot, you have to build it first. And I think it's true, and that's what we've seen in my experience even before I joined Rasa, is that you want to be able to create a minimum viable assistant that, let's say it's a help desk assistant. If it can answer the top 10 questions that people ask it, and if it can do like the top 1 or 2 things that people need solved, if it's like opening a ticket or something like that, that was pretty popular. So that's the example that comes to mind, is that, all right, so this bot can answer these 10 questions and it can open a ticket for you. And that's good. It doesn't have to be perfect before you release it to really real users and like release it to production, because you only learn how you can improve it based on the conversations that you get, based on how it fails, and based on, the feedback that you get. So I would say like release it as soon as you can. Don't wait until you think it's perfect, because then you have a great opportunity to make those improvements, because it's our guiding principle that real conversations are better than hypothetical ones. So you could come up with lots of hypothetical conversation paths, but it might not work, or it might not really match real user expectations, because people will surprise you and ask you things, or um, ask follow-up questions, or digress from a happy path and change their mind and say, actually, no, I don't want to open a ticket. So what do you do when you can't necessarily plan for things like that, right? So it helps to like hand this over to real users. And when you see something that's mission critical that's failing, then obviously you want to hand that over to an actual like live agent that can then help solve that problem. Like if it's a refund and the bot doesn't understand what that is or how to do it, um, like you mentioned with like things involving money and things like that, it probably makes sense to hand over to a live agent.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you've seen fail when in POC stage? Like, what are the top things that, okay, this happened. This probably isn't a good thing. We could have avoided it by doing this. Have you seen like a common denominator of projects that just didn't do well because of some specific reasoning, or is it a little random, or the team, or it just wasn't planned out right?
Yeah.
What have you seen?
Yeah, no, I mean, they fail for a few reasons. The most common ones I've seen is if you don't have, an effective team that can do it. Like if you only give it to one or two developers, or, a project manager, and you say, well, this is a low code or no code platform. And so you can probably
Yeah.
put something together and push it to production. We've found that clicking together a chatbot doesn't necessarily work. You do need good conversation design, and you do need these UI options that can, if you click a button, it will nudge the user back onto a happy path. And you do need, tools that allow you to make your application more robust. So having an ideal team that can build a mission critical assistant is important. And when you don't have that, chances are it might not always, work well. Some of the other reasons why chatbot projects can fail is if you spend too much time trying to make it better and make it perfect, because that's the way we've been trained to build applications, is that you want to wait until it is so perfect before you release it to production. And I think that makes sense for like an e-commerce website. You obviously don't want to release like, a search engine, or like an e-com shop when it's going to fail, or when that there are so many bugs in it. And so you can't necessarily use that conventional wisdom when it comes to chatbots, because you have to be able to release a chatbot and learn from those real user conversations to make it better. So I think that when you have these very rigid intents, or you spend too much time trying to make it perfect by carving out all of these conversation paths, when you have like a bunch of rules and if-else statements for your bot to recover or go off of, we've seen that sometimes it fails because in the real world, it's not going to follow those rules. So those are two things that we've seen fail. And I think another reason is if you start collecting feedback and you don't have like an effective feedback loop, you don't necessarily implement the feedback that you get and make those iterative developments and improvements, your chatbot is not going to keep it. Because if you stop teaching it, it's going to stop learning. So you have to make those continuous improvements as you go on.
Yeah, I think from that feedback as well, it tells you a lot about the company. Like maybe potential pivots, what more customers are actually interested that you think about. Well, we often talk about how some of the best bots on the market are the bots that know what they don't know, and have like the strongest default messaging, where if it messes up, or if it doesn't know something, it has very sound way to either loop them back into asking another question, or assuring the customer on the other end that it will learn eventually. It appreciates your feedback, and either try again or don't. But having that sound default kind of loop has been really helpful in some of the designs that we've seen.
And
What's any examples of like feedback that's been taken from a bot where it's kind of changed the company a little bit, or they've taken like that feedback really well and then implemented a change within the bot where it came back and was able to answer that, did a good job?
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really good point, right? With feedback in learning from feedback and having those strong defaults is, if you have a default that says, okay, well, if the question was about a refund and I don't know how to, okay, I'm sorry, I can't answer this question at the moment. I'm still learning, but for questions about refunds, email this person. That makes a huge difference because it
Yeah.
tells that the chatbot understood that it didn't know anything about refunds, but it knew who to point me to. So I think that
Yeah.
is a good experience.
It knew the general context and was able from there to say, okay, this isn't me randomly not understanding what you're saying. I kind of get it. You should probably talk to this person, so they can help you out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
But in terms of like based off of the feedback changing or pivoting, I think that's a place where you can use feedback to collect recommendations for skills and capabilities that you want to see in your chatbot. So in addition to just indirectly learning from how conversations work and how you can make those improvements, so your machine learning policy or model can better generalize from it. You also have things like, well, you told me how to you gave me a link to open a ticket, but it'd be really helpful if it would actually open a ticket for me. And that's how we've included that ticket, functionality capability in the chatbot that we built last year, because we got that from user feedback. And then when we got that, when we made that integration, we reached back out to all of the users that requested that feature. We said, hey, by the way, I can open a ticket for you now. Why don't you give? So we're able to like close the feedback loop as well. So there are lots of ways that we've taken those, and enough people request a particular feature, we've implemented, integrated it, and then closed a feedback loop. So I think that is also a really valuable way to learn from user conversations.
Yeah, one speech I really love that Alex often gives, Alex with Rasa, is the bot stages. The first stage, second stage, third stage,
Yeah.
and fourth. Where like the first is like just simple notifications, and then the fourth is being able to it actually does stuff for you. And I love that that cycle that he talks about. It's spot on. What do you think is next? What would you predict? Being in Rasa, seeing things that a lot of the bigger enterprise clients that you work with, like what's missing? What's the most difficult aspects, even still today with all the resources around? And where do you kind of see the space going in the next like, 2 to 5 years?
Yeah, solid question. I think that I did like a lot of stuff is missing and a lot of stuff doesn't really work right now, but we can dig into this. I think the 5 levels of AI assistance that we talk about, where we like outline a conversational AI maturity is, like you said, level 1 notification, level 2 is just rules and if else statements, and level 3 is where we are right now or where we're trying to go, because like some platforms allow you to build level 3 assistance, but level 3 is just something like you said that understands context or is able to act on contextual information and take the next best action based on everything that's been said before in the conversation and everything about the user. You're able to take it and actually do things for the user. We're trying to make level 3 assistance the standard. Oh, by the way, speaking of level 3 assistance, we are super excited to announce our new conference, which is the level 3 AI assistant conference.
Oh,
So, we'd love to have you, talk. And, it's a free, fully online conference. So everyone should attend. But we're trying to make level 3 standard, right? So and what's next is level 4 and 5, they're even more personalized. And level 5 is just like, a chatbot that can manage entire company operations. So it can like manage effectively a portion of sales or lead gen or HR or something like that. We're just trying to make level 3 the standard right now. So we still have a long way to go. But
what do you think is the standard right now?
the standard right now is still a lot of level 2 FAQ assistants that are based off of state machines and that really just function based on rules. You know, if the user says this, respond with this. And, you know, this is what a typical conversation, you know, decision tree looks like. And so it's trained based on just that. So if you don't follow that path, or if you ask something else in the middle of a conversation, it doesn't necessarily understand and it says, sorry, I don't understand. I think
Do you think the level 2 sets up the right framework though to move yourself to level 3, or do you think you could skip it and just start at 3? Because we see when we do the trees or have done them in the past, it actually provides a good backbone and structure for understanding like what the bot's capable of doing, at least in the beginning, to work off of. But do you see in the future just starting at 3 and going from there?
Yeah, I mean, I think rules still are a very effective and a very easy way to help you get started, just like intents. I think level 2,
Yeah.
even level 3, you still need intent. We don't know what that's going to look like, even though Alan talked about, you know, we should probably get rid of intents, and we don't know what that looks like just yet. But, you know, they're really so useful in helping you get started and building a minimum viable assistant that you could then start testing and using real user conversations to improve on. So I think you still need that, and you need conversation, and you need rules still. I think you could go straight to level 3 in that you build something that kind of works and you test it. Level 3 is nothing but using tools and real user conversations to make it better. So you could, all you have to do is just keep testing it and keep including that feedback and retraining your model, making it better.
Mhm.
But, you know, in terms of what's also next, we've been playing around, and I think a lot of researchers are talking about using transfer learning for conversational AI. So what does that look like? You know, transfer learning at its simplest is just using one data set or a domain, applying it in another similar domain. So if you have an assistant that knows how to book flights, what if you apply that to booking hotels, because it's somewhat similar? So if you're able to do that, you build one bot, one chatbot, but then you can use it for 2, 3 other use cases maybe. We still have a long way to go to actually get that to work, but what would that look like? And you know, what would it look like to have no intents? I think those are two interesting things that we can look towards.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think we're starting to wrap up on time. I mean, this has been great. I always love, you know, kind of catching up with you. And
Okay.
yeah, it's making it a lot more fun. Any last minute feedback for some of the people just getting started or that are like working their way up to pitching a POC to their upper management?
Yeah, I'd say that, you know, conversational AI is not solved yet, just like if that's the one main takeaway that you can get, and we're all kind of learning together. But we are seeing a lot more tools now. There's a lot more maturity in terms of tools that can help you automate, you know, things like CI/CD and deployments and setting up a chatbot. And there's a lot of data that you can use and improve your chatbots. So we're all sort of like learning this together. But I would say, you know, build an MVP, use like an open source platform like Rasa to build an MVP, and try to demo it to people on your team, to upper management, and really try to make the case that you could use that to automate conversations and to, you know, see a lot of time value in projects like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, it has been awesome. I just have one more thing to teach you.
Okay.
It's this new move that I've been working on, you know, since COVID-19 and everything and social distancing. When you walk up to someone, you can use this if you'd like. I'll use this to sign off. You just walk up to them and give them kind of this like air hug / dab. It's
like this?
Yeah, kind of like.
I like that. That's cool.
You just go to strangers and you're like, because you can't like hug each other, but you want to, but you can't, and it's like you get it, and I'm out.